2nd, 2025 Tualatin City Council Work Session. First item on our agenda tonight is a visit from County Commissioner Jason Snyder for his quarterly update. It's usually an interactive dialogue, but I'll give the floor for you, give the floor to you for a few minutes. If you have a few things you want to say first, and then we can dive into the Q&A.
I really want to dive into that. I mean, I think that you all have been continually giving me, or many of you have been continually giving me feedback over the last couple months, and I appreciate that. I'm also was very appreciative of being invited back, quick, relatively on a quick time frame from our last visit on this front. And I know I was before you to talk about the public safety and the library levies, and I have no belief I'm going to get out of this conversation today without some discussion of one or both of those. But really want to open it up. I think I've been pretty clear on the work that we're doing as a county commission. I have my staff assistant, Bryn, with me in case there's any follow-up that we need to document and get going on. So I just want to open the floor up.
All right, I'll open the floor. Council Pratt has her hand up first.
Okay, let's have some fun. And thank you for showing up.
Not even a minute.
Yeah. So I'm trying to understand this, the library funding going forward, or what we're seeing in our packet later tonight as the funding allocation that's proposed. So the first thing I want to understand is there's an allocation by kind of the area being served. And then for the, what are called nonprofit libraries, there's an allocation to support their, I guess, their building and operations of their building. What I'm wondering is, the people that live in the cities, aren't we paying taxes to operate our buildings through the city level? So which are these nonprofit organizations, and why was this decision made to give them additional funding?
So comparing it to a city,
Yes.
so first I should share that we are still, as a commission, I think we have a long session scheduled tomorrow to continue our dialogue on all of these subjects related to the library funding. I've been asked the question you just asked in a couple different ways from other city councilors, and actually City Council President Sherwood asked me the same question, or a very similar question, around just, who's contributing, or who should be contributing this sort of like city portion of the money to those nonprofit libraries. And I think the question is just sort of like, who would, like, where would that come from? Other than them fundraising, there is not a mechanism by which they get to tax in a different, or in any sort of a specific way. I think the implication from at least the discussion I had with the Sherwood counselor was that, somehow the county should be contributing a different amount, and we can do that, but that just means there'll be less money to, give out. In fact, that you could say that's what's happening now. I mean, that is what the allocation formula has more going to them. That would be equivalent to the same as the county contributing more. I guess if the implication is that it should be not from the levy, it should be from somewhere else,
No.
then the question would be where? We're moving more and more towards levies having to fund everything.
No, it's not the levy, it's the idea that, I guess that cities are paying to have their operations, and these are nonprofits, so therefore they don't have a funding source, but doesn't that kind of mean the people that live in the incorporated cities are helping to pay for these libraries outside the incorporated cities?
So I think it means that, and I think that we all, given that I've lived in Tigard my entire Washington County existence, we all have been doing that on a bunch of different fronts for decades. And that's what the nature of having the urban unincorporated areas allowed to sort of both persist or even flourish that's what that means. I mean, ultimately, I don't think there's any way around that. Now, there's a lot of things that have been done to sort of try to correct some of that and make some of it being paid for through whether it's like the enhanced sheriff's patrol district. There's a variety of, like, there's an urban roads maintenance district. There's a variety of things that have been done to sort of try to help some of that, but I don't think there's a way to
the way it
back
is.
it all out.
Yeah, okay. No, I just wanted clarification on.
I mean, I think the solution ultimately is that those areas, eventually, sometime between now and 30 years from now, all need to end up in a city.
Okay, and going on to these areas and places that should be cities, when I look at the allocation increases, I'm sure you've heard this one too, but like, we're gonna get a 5% increase as projected in the latest model we've seen. But Aloha Banks and Plains get 100% or more increase, so I guess I want to understand why their increase is so much higher than it looks like almost all the cities.
And this is definitely a subject that's gonna be, and has been discussed quite a bit at the commission, and I think there have already been some adjustments made, because I think some of the increases were even higher in previous models than they are now. But it's really a question around trying to balance out and be as equitable as we can be around where there's demand for the services. And just because a place has been wildly underserved before doesn't mean it should just keep remaining being underserved, I think is the basic premise there.
I'm just going to put in a little plug for the service areas were looked at, but was there any time spent looking at how many people like use the libraries, different libraries already?
I believe that was part of the
Okay.
analysis that was done.
Okay, and then my last question on that is it shows a 5% increase with the levy for next year for Tualatin. Is that just a one-year thing? So, I mean, my concern is people are gonna be paying for a levy, and it's gonna be a one-year increase. If that stays flat, then between the cost of buying new books and employees, we're gonna be in a bigger hole in 3 or 4 years.
The intent is to, and I think this has been relatively well communicated now to the parties that have been directly involved in the conversations. But there is an intent to provide the same increase that the county property taxes go up by.
Okay.
I think we're nervous about committing to saying that's for sure
Of
gonna
course,
happen.
yeah.
There are dynamics at play in the, office space work environment that I'm not sure what we've experienced the last 20, 25 years on that trend is going to continue in the same way that we might expect it. So I think we're cautious about guaranteeing it, but I think what the folks in those conversations have said is we're committed to being equitable and trying to do that. And unless there's some significant reason why that couldn't happen, like the increases did not go up by, or the property tax collections did not go
Right.
up by 4.25% like they have, we'd need to reevaluate that. But I think everybody's pretty nervous about just saying, oh yeah, we'll do that.
And then this is my last question, and I'll turn my mic off, but I just want to know what the top priority items are for the county for the next year.
Wow. How long would you like that list?
Let's stick to housing and mental health services.
Oh, just to housing and mental health. I think right now in both of those spaces, we are in a world where the funding is less certain than it was 9 months ago. And that we are just trying to figure out how we can continue even providing the services that we've been providing in the funding environment that we now find ourselves in. I think that's a real issue, a significant issue, and also to the extent that there are state mandated requirements around some of that, where funding is decreasing. We're going to be also having significant discussions with the state legislature about all the mandates for services that they expect but are paying less and less for. So that's not a rosy picture, but I think that's the reality of what the work in those spaces look like. I don't think we're in a world where we're going to be doing more innovation and being able to offer more services in that right now.
Well, thank you.
Other questions for Commissioner Snyder?
To dovetail on that and ask you, thank you for being here. I appreciate it.
Yeah, you bet. Good to see you.
Dovetail on Counselor Pratt's question. So are there any strategies that you're currently looking at to combat those funding restraints?
Yes, there is both work being done on I think we're continuing to monitor the legal landscape in particular. I'll leave that at that without getting into a lot more detail. So that's sort of in a continuous state of evaluation and reevaluation. There is also a pretty broad review going on now of county just revenue and revenue streams and things that we have kind of, from my perspective, where I sit, and this is now me giving you my opinion, but things where the county's just left large quantities of revenue on the table and not pursued them. So one example, just coming from a city perspective, when I was a mayor and a city councilor, there's no franchise fees charged for use of right-of-way anywhere in the county. So, like, that's just, you all are probably sitting here going, that's bananas. Why would you not pursue that? So there's revenue things that are being evaluated, and I'm just giving you one example. There are a lot of things like that are on the table and being evaluated to try to shore up the financial position of the county and be able to extend some more of the services that we know our communities need.
Other questions? Council Brooks?
Hi, thank you for coming today.
You bet. Good to see you.
Nice to see you too. So how many nonprofit libraries are there?
I believe it's 3. Is that right, friends? I think it's 3.
3. And then I'm just curious if there's a strategic plan around this, a way to consider how we talk to our constituents and taxpayers about how this is fair and reasonable, and if there's a way of, I don't want people to be underserved, obviously, and at the same time, it seems interesting that we would build something out that's not planned for financially with a tax base or any consistent funding besides the cities all pitching in. And
Are you talking about the urban unincorporated areas? Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's I would say a fair bit of effort going into evaluating that situation overall. I think strategic communication plan that you're describing is probably a future step that's not being worked on actively right now, because we're still trying, I think, to figure out how to move forward in the long run, and having some discussions and doing some specific work to evaluate just in a couple of places, as an example, what it would take to get to a different place. So both Beaverton and Tigard are both engaged with the county at evaluating areas that are adjacent to those cities that would be probably some of the earlier areas to work on. And that will inform a lot of future work.
okay, because I kind of always go back to that our library does everything in social services at this end of the county. And as much as I want to be equitable to everybody. I also want to be attentive to the people in my community that are not treated equitably in the county. So I think that there's a piece there where there's, I don't know, a belief or something that says that this community is somehow flush with tons of resources to be contributing to other places instead of that we work really hard, that we have a library foundation, that people put in a lot of time and energy, and then we're still not capturing anything near what we need to as far as social services, and especially with things continuing to diminish and people continuing to be more vulnerable at this end of the county, so far away from the county seat. Beaverton, even Tigard, where more services are located, were, I don't know if I said this too, but when I was working on the STIP, I was representing geographical diversity. And the first meeting we had, our city was not on the map. It was literally cut off the map. And that was the map that the county was using to consider the needs of the community. So I have a sensitivity about, is that really understood at the county level? I think that some people think that this community is, doesn't have any census tracts or.
I have that concern, I'll be honest, about virtually my entire district.
Yeah,
And it affects me directly too.
right.
I mean, this is stupid stuff, but like I get the same travel allowance, whatever, that the commissioners that live two miles from the commission. I'm 30 miles, which also means, by the way, that when I drive to Salem, that's not outside the 50-mile range for me, so I get to pay for that, but they get to I mean, it's like, it's not, it affects everything.
Yes.
And I'm just giving you a silly example, but that, I mean, it worries me all the time about my entire district.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate that. And I guess for me, I would like to see some advocating around strategic planning around this, because it doesn't seem really sustainable, and it seems interesting to be investing money before having the plan of how do you keep this building going forward. And it sounds like there's some things that are being approached.
Yeah, and the library, I would say, is just one example in the tip of the iceberg.
Yeah.
There is a lot more to this than just the library, but I think your point is well taken and is acknowledged that,
Okay.
This is not sustainable. And the size of, I think the other thing people may not really recognize, just to be totally transparent with all of you, is the size of this area, the unincorporated urban area. Anyone want to venture a guess as to how many residents there are? It'd be the second largest city in the state if it was a city.
That's crazy, isn't it?
More than 200,000. It's about 220,000. To
Yeah.
give you an idea of the scope.
And I understand then, fair enough, and there's a lot of people that want to choose to live outside cities for a lot of different reasons, and a lot of it, some is great.
So that's true, but you also can't get urban services for free either,
No,
or at a discount,
no.
which is what's happening.
Yeah. So, yes, I don't disagree.
I'm sure I'm going to be very popular with my fellow commissioners tonight for this.
Well, that was my second question was, how can we be supportive to you advocating for this area and those needs? Is a letter, or is coming to which commission meeting, or is there a way that we can be?
I would suggest that, I don't know that all of you need to do this, but some of you should probably be monitoring whether it's the mayor or council president or whatever, monitoring the work that's happening at the county around urban services framework and our financial, like where we're headed from a financial sustainability standpoint and the evaluation that's happening there. I think those are all things that directly tie to what you're talking about.
Yeah. And then I'm going to say one more thing about the library, even though this isn't quite what's on the agenda, but The other concern I have, especially when we're talking about this locational stuff, is with the centralization, it's sort of like, there's two concerns I have, is the professionalism at our library, the library professionals being on site. And I don't think that's good to not have our professionals on site. And then the second is having our needs being, our community's desires being curated in the system as well. If there's any reflection of what's been happening, like what you're talking about as far as maybe disenfranchisement because of geographical location, I could say that, then I don't see how the centralization is going to bode better for us in that situation.
So you're specifically talking about the centralization of the collection?
Yeah.
I think, well, I know, Lisa Tattersall, the WCCLS manager, has provided responses as that question's been raised, that there are a lot of ways that they intend to do that well and to do it engaged with their communities. It may not provide as much autonomy as each individual library had on the collection, but there's a commitment to making sure that as best as possible needs are met, feedback is provided, action is, information is acted on, and that's gonna have to be part of what happens. I personally am not gonna stand for that not being addressed, because we then really will have lost something that I think is important in the process. Do I think it's gonna be 100%? No, but do I think it needs to be at least 80%? Yeah.
Well, I appreciate it, and I appreciate your perspective and understanding of this area. As far as anything else that's going on, I guess the real thing is wanting to stay in contact about how we can be supportive, and if there's ways that we can testify at certain times.
Sure.
If it's helpful, we would really appreciate that, and at least I would. I have no problem doing that. And then, anyway, we're glad that you're here.
Thank you. I think Bryn and I both have made note of the desire to be supportive and provide both testimony and input on a couple of these topics. So we'll be looking for those opportunities in the future.
I have one other quick one. When we were talking about ways that we're losing money towards behavioral health and those other things, there's all the AI training that's been going on in different quadrants that I've been in, whether it's the League of Oregon Cities doing some, the National League of Cities is doing some, we just had some over at the Chamber. Have there been any thoughts about helping to, some of the stuff that's going on, that's coming down through the feds is ways to do more paperwork to keep, that affects systems efficiency and effectiveness, and is there a way to streamline that and think about that systemically so that there could be more efficient reporting, for instance, like on jobs or?
Yeah, I can certainly ask that question, or Bryn can follow up on that. I don't know offhand, and that's getting, I think, a bit more into the operational details of how some of that work is done, and I don't have specifics on that right now.
I just think it's so innovative and it can streamline work so quickly that it might be something that could be even guided through to help speed things up so that we don't need as many people making up the bureaucratic difference.
Yeah, I just in general, I don't find a lot of value in doing a lot of extra reporting to get less and less money.
Right.
It's kind of again, that goes back a little bit to what some of the conversations we may need to have with the state. The federal government traditionally has been pretty challenging on that front because it's sort of a take it or leave it proposition, and you're not going to change the language in the contract. So.
No, but we could be more
We
efficient
could,
in
yeah.
checking boxes.
I think it's a good point, and Bryn will certainly follow up and get back to you.
Thank you.
I just want to thank you for coming I hope your visits continue to be fairly frequent and that, I personally feel like we're being heard and that your background at the city level gives a perspective that we need at the county level.
Thank you.
Other
Council.
questions or comments? Right, almost right on time. So I just got one, and it's the one I always harp on that Council Brooks kind of alluded to. You know, city services being provided in unincorporated Washington County, that this county has decided before you were there to spin up these services.
For
in-
decades.
for decades in unincorporated areas that are traditionally city services, and now the county is finding it tough, almost impossible to fund things. They've stood up. Same thing happened with the jail. They didn't let that go, and now we're in a quandary about fixing the jail. So now that we're in a predicament now that we're having to issue these levies to basically backfill funds that the county doesn't have in the general fund, and to Bridget's point, that if the county did not have these 3 or 4 libraries out there, the funds would be going to city libraries, and we'd be funding, more of the funds would be going towards the cities versus those libraries that are in unincorporated Washington County, or tweaking the funding mechanism, as you mentioned, that you're still doing, I know it's still going on, to better reflect the needs in the cities, because we do have to pay for our employees, the overhead of the building. So the county should be in the same hook of these libraries. They stood up years ago. They should have to support those outside of the levy. But the predicament you're in, I understand, is that you don't have the money in the general fund anymore, that we have to rely more and more on these levies.
Yeah,
So
I mean,
as Bridget's saying, money is
it-
coming from the
if we're-
cities to fund unincorporated Washington County
If
in
we're
greater and greater
going,
need.
if we're going to have a real conversation about property tax reform and
Mm-hmm.
how we fund public services, I think that's a very valid one, but
Mm-hmm.
the mechanism that just like you as a city that
Mm-hmm.
you have is to put levies on the ballot.
Mm-hmm.
Like that is what you see the
Mm-hmm.
county doing when we're making these moves. And it is in part to support the cities.
Mm-hmm.
And it is in part to support the library system that's not in cities. That's a both and. It's not that the levy's just for one or the
Mm-hmm. Right.
other. It's for both and. And it is intended to be a system. And that's, you can, I guess, critique whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, but I think we all enjoy having a good library system, and I constantly heard when I was mayor and city councilor, and even now, about how much more desirable are multiple people I know who I would walk into the Tigard Library and I'd be like, "You live in Lake Oswego. What are you?"
Yep.
And they're like, "Well, the programs for the kids and all the stuff and the things and the space is much nicer here." It's like, okay, welcome to Tigard again.
I just look forward to more. I know it's not till, it sounds like now to the end of October that you might be nailing down this revenue sharing and the funding stream. So I know it's still a work in progress, so we are definitely keeping our ears open to what's going on and the changes from week to week, and, where other cities are standing in terms of support or lack of support for the levy. But we are listening, and we do want to participate, and
And we're listening too. I mean, I think there may even be some people even in the Tualatin sphere who are frustrated with the fact that the funding formula is still being revisited and some of that. Reality is I think the commission is trying to hear feedback and trying to do what it can. I think we all kind of thought it was maybe close to settled too, and then we continued to get
yep.
robust feedback. And so we're just trying to do our best to listen to all of that and to try to make the best decisions we can that is as fair and equitable to all people is really what we're trying to do.
All right. Well, thank you for coming tonight. Very much
Thank you.
appreciate it. All right, so that brings us to the second item on our work session tonight, the Sidewalk Maintenance Program Backlog Review, and this will be Jackson and Lindsay. Welcome.
Hi, good evening, Mayor, Council. Lindsay Marshall, Management Analyst in Public Works.
And I'm Jackson Porterfield, Management Analyst in Public Works.
And we are back to talk about sidewalks. So just a quick overview of okay, let's see if I remember how to work this. Wait, there you go. A quick recap of what we're going to be talking about is we're going to be looking at our program history. So I'll give a quick reminder of what we've talked about before, where we've been, and then Jackson will take over and talk about the new information and the kind of solution that we're coming to you with. So we'll talk about the program history, the sidewalk assessment that we completed, the backlog itself, the proposed solution to the backlog, next steps, and then any feedback or discussion that you all might want to have. Okay. So why are we here? This slide could also be titled, "What do we know?" We know that sidewalks have an average lifespan of about 25 to 50 years, and that since 1970, Tualatin's been growing exponentially. So that end-of-life sidewalk kind of looks like sidewalk defects, right? So you get some crumbling, spalling, some lifts that cause tripping hazards, things like that. So you can tell that the sidewalk is nearing its end of its life. We also know that street trees have an average lifespan of about 20 years, and they're also a major cause of sidewalk hazards, especially trip hazards. Those roots come up under the sidewalk, pop those panels up, and cause tripping hazards. We also know that sidewalks here in Tualatin and street trees are the responsibility of the homeowner, the adjacent property owner, and we know that property owners are not addressing this maintenance, and that's for a variety of reasons. Some don't know that it's their responsibility, and also repairs of this type can be expensive. It's expensive to take out a tree, pull out the roots, replace the tree, do the concrete for the panel replacement. It can get pricey. And so we have had for many years a sidewalk maintenance program that helps to offset some of those funds, so the city will cover the cost and do the work to replace those trees and panels. Ideally, or when this program was first started, we had about a 3-year cycle, and over the years with Tualatin's growth and funding, it's ballooned up to a 9-year cycle. So that's what we know. Our current program, again, is to repair, the whole purpose is to repair residential sidewalk defects that have been caused by street trees specifically. The criteria here is lifts over a 1/4 inch, and a lift over a 1/4 inch is what ADA defines as a tripping hazard. We've got more criteria kind of guiding that, is that with street trees only. So we're not addressing any lifts or defects caused by private trees, so on private property. We're just looking at those trees that are kind of in the planter strip, considered street trees, and that are not in a driveway. So any lifting or cracking or crumbling that's happening in the driveway, this program is not set up to address those either. We do have $150,000 a year. That's been increased twice since 2018, from $50,000 up to $150,000. And right now that's addressing about 10 to 15% of the program qualified defects per year. So any of those defects that qualify as a lift over 1/4 inch, street tree caused, and not in a driveway. And again, we know that the program has increased to a 9-year cycle. And so we're thinking, why has this increased to a 9-year cycle? What is going on here? Is it just Tualatin's growth? Is it something else? Do we bring any money? We needed to get some more information. So we decided to do a citywide assessment, and this happened last summer 2024. And we had a contractor go out, walk every sidewalk in the city, and document every ADA concern. We created a photographic inventory of the curb ramps, since we were already out there, and we painted those trip hazards with white paint just to make them more visible since we were out there. The goal of this assessment was to really understand the condition of our network and also have data to work with, right? So instead of like, oh, we feel like this is what the problem is, now we have data to say, now we know what the problem is, and we know what our sidewalk looks like and what we need to do to address those things. What the assessment found was roughly 2,000 recorded defects in the sidewalk system. And again, these are defects, not just lifts. This is spalling and crumbling. These are separations. These are obstructions, things that are kind of getting in the way of the sidewalk. We found that most defects are in residential areas, but we also found that the majority of defects are not caused by the street trees. And our program addresses defects caused by the street trees.
Thank you. So yeah, as Lindsay said, the majority of the 2,000 are not street tree caused. It's a lot of spalling, crumbling panels, private tree caused issues. And so narrowing our focus to what we do aim to fix, we found 327 program qualifying defects, with a few small tweaks to the program that I'll get into in a minute. And, you know, from looking at this, we kind of realized that the backlog is not as large as we'd anticipated, and kind of a return to a reasonable cycle is within reach. So we're not on that 9-year cycle and letting things just stay hazardous for a long time. So that brings us to our work proposal. These next few slides is kind of what we're here today to propose. So one priority is looking ahead. We don't want these, tree caused issues to recur going forward. And so we're taking a couple measures to stop trees from having these issues crop up. One of the first measure is our Parks Department right now is revising our street tree list. So they're removing, the trees that are causing the most issues, and they're gonna continue to add some that, fit in the planter strip better and aren't causing these lifts. And the second set of tweaks is in accordance with council goals that we received in January. So one piece of advice that we were given then was to remove grinds from the program. So we're just going to be focusing on the most hazardous defects. And we're also aligning with organizational goals of the climate action plan and using low emission concrete. So that's the second small tweak we're making to the program. And third point is kind of the bulk of our proposal here. We're aiming to do a one-time catch-up job where we, work through that whole backlog of 327 defects and get back on schedule. And that'll be over 2 years. And so here we're just gonna quickly take a look at the repair costs, just kind of for some transparency and you understand what's going into our total cost calculation. So you can read the costs off the slide there. We included the root barrier, obviously. We included a little uptick for general contractor management, the low emission concrete. And yeah, these are recent, the most recent, these are very recent bids and we're confident in these numbers. They're coming from this spring at the Las Casitas CDBG project. So we're pretty confident that we can get these prices. And so that kind of brings us to our backlog by the numbers. You can see here how many trees we aim to replace and how many defects we aim to repair. So 337 trees are going to be replaced in repairing the backlog. That's about 3% of our trees. And that is one, pretty important consideration of this project is we're going to be losing a considerable amount of our tree canopy. So, those 3% of trees are going to be more mature and probably account for a little bit of a larger percent of our canopy. And there you can see the 327 defects are 16% of the total defects we found in our, whole network-wide assessment. And that all adds up to $1.2 million cost for the 2-year backlog repair. And that's including a, contingency buffer that we added on of about like 24% or so. And so in case you're wondering, how's this project taking 2 years to do 300 repairs? No, we're not going to be doing one repair every other day for 300 repairs. It's going to be, I think I skipped a slide.
Oh, you're good. Where's
I
the money
guess
coming from?
we'll do the funding first. I skipped ahead. So yeah, where's the $1.2 million coming from? This is something we looked over with finance. The first pot we're going to pull from is our existing program funding. Right now, we get $150,000 per year for the sidewalk maintenance program. And so, we assume that this work's gonna unfold over 2 years, so presumably that's at least 300,000 are coming from there. And next, these are kind of ordered in, where we're gonna pull from. So next, we'd take from what's remaining of ARPA funds, then the road utility fund, and finally, the general fund if we need it. And then here's the timeline that I was talking about. It's not gonna be one every other day. It's gonna be pretty concentrated. So we kind of look at this project as 3 phases. We're in the first phase on the left right now. We're looking for approval and a little bit of, maybe instruction for down the line from council. And then we're gonna be selecting a contractor and firming up that street tree list before we start doing the replanting. And then next summer and fall, we'd be doing the first round of sidewalk repairs and tree replanting. We would take a break there and evaluate kind of our progress in the program. Are we on track? Are we able to administrate it properly? Is it affordable? And then we resume the following year, 2027, in the summer and fall and do the second half of the work. And the final step following that is making sure that the program is kind of back on track. We're hoping to return it to roughly that 3-year cycle, so we might need to make some revisions, and so we'll kind of check in with council along the way, across the 2 years of work and going forward to make sure the program is in the place that we want it to be. And yeah, that's all we've got. Anything to add, Lindsay?
Nope, we're good. Discussion,
All
feedback?
right, questions? Council Brooks?
I had like 3. One is, when they were doing the sidewalk assessments, were they also doing just tree assessments where some people take their trees out and don't replace their trees?
No, this was just sidewalks. So Parks has been doing a separate assessment of the street tree, what's there, what's not. So they have their own list. This was just looking at sidewalk damage.
Okay,
Yeah.
so when we go to replace the trees,
Mm-hmm.
would we be coordinating with whatever areas we're looking at with the other inventory that's going on with street
Yes,
trees that have
yes.
been removed?
Yeah, we're working closely with Parks to kind of overlay our sidewalk assessment with their street tree assessment and making sure that we're making those kind of best decisions going forward, looking at the 2 data sets.
Okay, and then my other question was, I get a lot of feedback on that one, because walkers, they're like, it's cool, it's hot. And, anyway, the next question I had was, with the trees, do you have any species that you know that are the more damaging and less damaging yet? Just like example or two?
I've heard some rumors
I-
about what they are, but
I want to say the Armstrong maple, I think, was that's 20% of our tree catalog and accounts for 40% of the tree cause defects. I think that's roughly the case. So that one we'll want to scratch for sure.
Okay,
But we'll let Parks confirm all that information
Yeah.
when they.
okay, we're curious about that. We would love an email, at least this week. And then my final question was, I see ads, I am not an expert on sidewalks, about straightening out concrete from filling it from underneath. And I was just curious if any of that kind of work is appropriate in any places, or if there could be resources for that kind of thing too, for people as we go through and do this work and they realize, oh, this is from my tree. These are some resources that we could, look at for trees, for the tree programs that are around, and also for different kinds of fixes for the sidewalk.
Yeah, absolutely. We're definitely interested in looking at those kind of new innovative things. We've had one test study, or we had one section of sidewalk where we did, they'd inject some kind of foam. Again, I don't totally know the details, but they inject a foam, it lifts the sidewalk up, it meets it back. It was maybe a year or 2 ago. We did it with one homeowner as a trial, and so we're gonna have to give it a couple of years to see what happens there and how that turns out. But if it goes well, then there's certainly a possibility of including that.
Okay, and was it cost effective?
Yes.
Okay.
I can't remember the exact numbers, but it was
Okay.
more cost effective than replacing the panels.
That's what I was, thank you very much.
Counselor Sacco.
Thank you for your presentation. I have two questions. The first one, and just it's a point of clarification, but when we say that we are going to catch up the backlog, we specifically mean pay 100% of those costs, the city, correct? We're not, okay. And then second question, the trees, or I'm sorry, the sidewalks that are, that have issues that are not caused by the trees, so the delta between the 2,000 whatever and the 300 whatever, what are we doing to address those, or are we sort of on the current operating process where we're waiting until there's some like notification that there's an
code
issue there?
compliant,
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, so right now, for this project, we're looking at just the backlog of the program qualified defects, and we would kind of go as per usual with the waiting for code compliance. That is a conversation that we could have in the future, but it's not part of what we're working on right now.
Other questions? Counselor Gonzalez.
I have a couple of things, so thank you for this information. I've been eagerly anticipating it. So I have four things. What is low emission concrete?
Low emissions concrete. Rachel, do you know the answer to low? I'm not the technical expert on that one.
I think it has to do with the temperature of, no, it's asphalt. I think it's used with a different kind of fiber that has a lower emissions content in making the fiber, but don't quote me on that.
We can get back to you on that one.
Okay,
With
thank
the
you very
technical details.
Thank you very much for that. And based on your presentation, you had said 24% contingency is what you're allocating for on this project, roughly correct? Is what you
Yes.
said, on the $1.2 million. That's $288,000. That's a lot of money. I am not a fan of change orders. Even when I see these projects come through the council that we have to pay change order adjustments, I'm not a fan of that. So my hope is that because by the time we add the change order costs, we could have just hired a contractor that doesn't give the change order cost. Maybe we can absorb the cost. And I'm not a fan of that. I'm seeing a commonality here. So when you reserve $288,000, I'd like to see that almost be a lot less than that. I mean, almost like 5% more so. And not go for the lowest bidder. So my hope is that we can take that into consideration. I think 2 years is too long as well. I don't know, we have the money, correct? Noticing the funding buckets that you've shared, the last one being the general fund, we have the money to do it now if we want to, correct? We just have to organize it, project management, and get it done.
Well, so thinking about spreading it, it's the actual work itself would be about 18 months, because we've got this, however many months of planning until we come back and start the work next spring. So rolling it into those 2 fiscal years, we're going to be able to utilize the program funds that we already have allocated per fiscal year, and also considering when we would do sidewalks versus when we plant, right? They're 2 different seasons, right? Because you've got the concrete work when it's dry and then the planting in the summer. We also want to make sure that we're doing it right, so splitting it up to make sure that we're on track and then coming back for a mid-project check-in. And then we also have to consider that Bert Olheiser, our streets manager, just retired, and so we've lost that kind of bulk of knowledge, and the person who's going to be managing the project is not here yet. So there are a variety of considerations as to why we put it over that 2 years, or really the 18 months worth of working time.
And as we move on to keeping pace with the project of 3 years, and how do we stay on pace? We have full inventory, correct? So you'll base that 3-year benchmark based on the collected data that we already have now, correct? Is that how that's going to be managed? Okay, we're doing the must do first due to tree issues, and then after that, whatever's then we start. There's a different priority list. I understand. Is that how that works? How you guys plan to stay on pace in the 3 years is?
Can you rephrase that? I'm not totally
So
clear.
we collected a lot of information on the most dangerous, right? And then the various reasons why the problem with sidewalks. how do we ensure we stay on pace on the 3 years? Are you basing that on what you've inventoried, on that workload?
Yes, so we're basing it off that 2024 assessment. We anticipate doing another assessment in the future to track and see, and also changes into the program, right? What we talked about before when we came to council was maybe adjusting the program to do a cost split with the homeowner, and so that would stretch our funds further than it does now to be able to address more defects per year than we have been able to. So that's one of the ways we could stay on task.
Okay, so thank you for that. And I know that you can answer these questions because it has to do with parks and trees. So I had sent some pictures that maybe it could be viewed at a different time. I know that we've inventoried trees sidewalks that are caused by tree problems, perfect. But there is also trees that are currently planted right now that are the wrong trees. They're literally, in my neighborhood alone, we've just completed a wonderful sidewalk project with ADA ramps, beautiful stuff. And trees were planted back literally 1 foot away. 1 foot away from this little corner, and it's an Armstrong maple. And as soon as that tree takes hold, it's gonna bust up that whole, it's literally within a foot from that, and that's completely wrong. And there's a lot of things like that they're small that can, I know that's a parks question that'll probably be addressed, but my hope is that we can get in front of that as well, since we're already on the topic of concretes and trees and
Yeah.
things like that.
Absolutely, and that's something where we're looking forward to working with Parks on, is taking their street tree data and our sidewalk data and overlaying that and looking at the proper trees for the proper place, and then looking at the addition of root barriers to try to extend that life of the sidewalk and the tree.
Thank you.
Council President Pratt.
Do you know how much ARPA funds are left for this project?
No.
You don't know? Dawn doesn't know? Okay, just a
I
question.
think I saw, I think I remember seeing on the budget that it showed about $2.5 million of ARPA funds, because I was asking for that money for the
We have
climate
that
action
much
plan
left?
to be
No way.
used. But I think there was a number like that.
Come on up, Don.
Yeah, sorry, Dawn.
So our two highest priorities of the remaining ARPA funds are finishing Las Casitas Park and then the trail next to SEPA. Those costs are still outstanding.
Okay.
And so that's why we don't have that total number of what that remaining number will look like yet.
Okay.
So
Approximate range? No? Okay,
it'll be,
I gotcha.
it'll
It's
be less
okay.
than $1 million, I can tell you
Okay,
that.
yeah,
But
okay.
it could range from a couple
That's okay,
100,000
but
to more.
it could
so.
be at least a couple 100,000.
I believe
there's
so
a
at this
chunk
point.
in there, okay, that's what I really wanted to know, thanks, Dawn. It's great, the idea of catching up, I think the biggest thing I hear from people, I mean, there are many issues with sidewalks, but the biggest one are, people are get really upset that you made us plant this tree and now it's tearing up our sidewalk. We hear it all the time, so I think that's great. Do you have an inventory, or do you know how many trees total are in the sidewalks? Because this is just seems like a small percentage, so my concern is like, for instance, I have trees that are maybe 15, 20 years old. They were plums before that. I don't know when that happened, and they're getting mature. So I imagine in the next 5 to 10 years, they're going to be upheaving the sidewalks too. So do you have an idea of, after you fix what's out there right now, how soon you're going to need funds to fix the remaining street trees issues? Or is that just too big of a thing to take on right now?
Totally sure how we're gonna, like, how to project that,
Yeah.
and maybe that's something we can work with Parks on and their arborist. But Dustin, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe there's about 10,000?
11,000 street trees and
Oh, wow.
2,100 missing trees in the inventory at this point.
Yeah, so 11,000 total and 2,100 missing, just in the street tree, so in that
Yeah.
planter strip category.
Wow. That's amazing.
Way more than I thought.
Yeah. I was guessing a couple thousand. Way up. Okay, well, that's really interesting. I mean, I think this is a really good start, but I just think that needs to be part of, I mean, our sidewalk issues are not solved here, but it's a really good start.
Absolutely.
Councilor Brooks.
Just while we were talking about that, I'm also curious, especially because of the concerns that people have about the canopy, replacing 21,000 trees or 2,100 trees. I'm like, wait. That would help also with the canopy. So I'm just curious if there's any way we can get like a little bit of, especially if we're working with an arborist, a little bit of percentages and numbers around canopy cover, what we're gonna lose, how quickly we're gonna make that back, and what putting the new trees in that were just removed and not replaced will do for the city's canopy.
Yeah, so this program will remove and replace those 337, I believe, trees that are qualified for the program. And then there's a whole different plan to address the 2,100.
Yeah. Sorry
that are
to
just
cross
straight up
over the
missing.
programs, but I
That's
know
okay.
that they're in the audience here. Anyway,
We're friends, we work closely together.
thank you very much.
Other questions? Only question I have, so when we had the first discussion, we had talked about the folks that will have to do some of the repairs themselves. Is part of this project, or is it a further project? We talked about developing a contractor list from the city that someone say, hey, I want to grind. Does the city have a preferred vendor, or I need to replace some panels?
Yep.
Is that part of this project, or is it going to be in a future project for folks who maybe want to fix their sidewalks in this 2-year timeframe?
Right. We're going to be concurrently working on, we're going to do the construction, go out and do the tangible things in this project. And concurrently, we're going to be working on and then coming to council periodically on those new program criteria and how that's going to play out and what that's going to look like. So coming back, talking about things like contractor list is on our work plan during this period.
Because I've had folks in my neighborhood ask, is there a list of vendors the city uses because they prefer to use them versus
Trying to find their own.
trying to find their own and find someone who's not so legit?
Yeah.
So, I mean, if keeping in the back of your mind that, the demand will probably be there right away as soon as they start seeing other things being fixed, maybe on their block. And, if they just need some small work, while that team is there, you never know.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Anything else? All right, well, thank you both.
Okay, thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
All right. All right, so our next item on the agenda is CFEC rulemaking for walkable communities. This is Aquila and Aaron. Welcome, both of you.
Good evening. I'm Aquila Hurd-Ravitch, and this is Aaron Eggman. And Aaron's going to give most of the presentation, and I'll help answer questions if I can. So.
Oh, that helps.
Yep.
So for tonight's agenda, we'll briefly recap the project purpose and background. Then we'll revisit the required code concepts and land use conditions in Tualatin before I transition into our policy discussion for auto-oriented uses. Ultimately, though, we are asking for council's direction on whether drive-through uses should be restricted in the mixed-use commercial zone. But first, this project is part of the larger Climate-Friendly and Equitable Communities, or CFEC, program, which is a state mandate to reduce greenhouse gas emissions from transportation with a focus on transportation planning and land use planning. Some of the major components of CFEC are designating climate-friendly areas, which are higher density mixed-use areas, and Tualatin satisfies this by complying with Metro's 2040 growth concept. There was also a parking reform component, which was met last year with the adoption of Ordinance 1486-24. And finally, the Walkable Design Standards project before you tonight is tied to the recent Transportation System Plan update. As the 2045 TSP was adopted on August 11th, staff had requested an extension to adopt the Walkable Design Standards project from DLCD. The approved request is included in the packet as Exhibit 2 and extends the adoption deadline to December of 2025. So the reason we're here tonight is the Walkable Design Standards project will require amendments to the Tualatin Development Code in order to implement Oregon Administrative Rule 0330. And the purpose of this rulemaking is to support compact, pedestrian-friendly, and mixed-use land development patterns. The mandated code amendments have been informed by a number of resources, including a code audit that our consultant MIG completed in February, direction and model code language provided by the state agency, DLCD. The Walkable Design Standards Guidebook and Model Code is included in your packet as Exhibit 1. We also considered input from community stakeholders that included architects, developers, accessibility advocates, and residents that are interested in different transportation options. And we also heard from council at work sessions held in February and May of this past year. This project touches on 4 key topic areas, though tonight's conversation is focused on the auto-oriented uses component. To provide a brief background on the other components, the neighborhood connectivity rules require adoption of maximum block length and block perimeter standards for residential neighborhoods. These standards were addressed under the 2045 TSP ordinance adoption. The residential neighborhoods rules apply to new residential construction to promote efficient and sociable development patterns. The project will require front yard setback reductions for residential development, as well as building orientation and access standards for multifamily development. The commercial and mixed-use districts rules call for compact development patterns that provide direct access to pedestrians, cyclists, and those using mobility devices in public transit. The project will require maximum setback provisions in these districts. And now that we've reviewed the project purpose and background, we'll dive into the details of auto-oriented uses and the rules. Ultimately, the rulemaking acknowledges that drive-through facilities can create uncomfortable spaces for pedestrians and those without a vehicle, as shown on this slide. The state rules require land use regulations that ensure auto-oriented land uses provide safe and convenient access opportunities for people walking, using a mobility device, or riding a bicycle. That means requiring pedestrian access to goods and services that is equivalent to or better than access for people driving a motor vehicle. Under the state rule, auto-oriented land uses include uses that are related to the operation, sale, maintenance, or fueling of motor vehicles, and uses where the use of a motor vehicle is accessory to the primary use, and that would include drive-throughs. To help jurisdictions implement the state rulemaking, the Department of Land Conservation and Development provided a model code with site design requirements. The document also included recommendations that go beyond the state requirements. And in one such example, the model code calls for prohibiting drive-throughs in pedestrian-oriented zones, though that is not required under the state rules. The model code also provides design standards that ensure a walk-up service area is provided for customers arriving on foot, bicycle, or a mobility device. Examples of a walk-up service area may include an indoor area that is directly accessible from the street, or an outdoor walk-up service window. Additional design standards are included to avoid conflicts between pedestrian areas and vehicle areas, and largely our code already addresses those additional standards. The model code goes on to define a drive-through as a facility or structure that is designed to allow drivers to remain in their vehicle before and during an activity on the site. Drive-through facilities also include facilities designed for the rapid servicing of vehicles where the driver may or may not remain in their vehicle. Drive-through facilities may also serve the primary use of the site or may serve accessory uses. And some examples under the model code include drive-throughs, gas stations, car wash facilities, quick oil change facilities, and even drive-in theaters. And then looking at Tualatin's situation, we have two zoning districts that promote pedestrian activity. One is the Central Commercial Zone, or the CC Zone, and the other is the Mixed Use Commercial Zone, or the MUC Zone. The purpose of the CC Zone is to provide areas of the city that are suitable for a full range of retail, professional, and service uses that are usually found in downtown areas that are patronized by pedestrians. Within the Central Overlay or Downtown Zone, the code prohibits restaurant drive-throughs and quick vehicle servicing uses, though bank drive-throughs may be considered under a conditional use permit in the area. And then the purpose of the MUC zone is to provide areas suitable for a mix of office, retail, and high-density housing. Retail uses should be located on the ground floor to encourage an interesting and active streetscape, and buildings should be oriented to the street with clearly marked entrances. This zone promotes the use of alternative modes of transportation, such as pedestrian, bicycle, or transit activity. And within the MUC zone, the code does allow drive-through uses, although quick vehicle servicing uses are prohibited and gas stations may be considered under a conditional use permit in the area. So to recap our previous slides, the Walkable Design Standard model code prohibits the development of new drive-through facilities in pedestrian-oriented districts. Tualatin has two pedestrian-oriented districts. One, the Central Commercial Zone. Most of these auto-oriented uses are restricted, but in our mixed-use commercial zone, there are some allowances. So given the purpose statement of the mixed-use commercial zone, staff is asking council if drive-through uses should be restricted in the MUC zone as well. It's kind of a tongue twister. But we'll get into what's in the MUC zone on the next couple of slides. So to orient ourselves, the mixed-use commercial zone is located in the northern antler of Tualatin, if we think of it as our deer. It's located adjacent to the Lower Boones Ferry exit off of Interstate 5. Excuse me. Bridgeport Village, The Point, Whole Foods, and the Grand Hotel are all located in this area. And currently, there are no drive-throughs established in the MUC zone. We do have a few vacant properties in the area. These lots on this slide are shown near the Boones Ferry Center and the Grand Hotel, which is located off of Lower Boones Ferry Road and adjacent to the Claim Jumper. So this top picture here is this acreage that's just shy of an acre, or the site that's just shy of an acre. I have these carrots here that kind of show the vantage point. So this is the top picture, and this is the vantage point of the second bottom picture. And we also have a vacant property that's located at the intersection of 72nd Avenue and Lower Boones Ferry. This building was once occupied by the Village Inn and was later purchased by In-N-Out. You may recall that In-N-Out submitted for an architectural review application in 2020, but ultimately they never provided the required traffic study and they let their application expire. So this property is a little over an acre, and it's located with close proximity to I-5. And on this slide, I just wanted to show some of the acreage that's required to develop a drive-through. These examples are pulled from Tualatin. So you can see it can be anywhere from a little over 0.3 of an acre to a little over an acre to support the use. So some of those vacant or underdeveloped sites would be able to accommodate a drive-through use, in theory. which leads me to one of my final slides. So as staff, we're looking for council direction, and we've listed a few different options for consideration. The first option is likely the easiest option to adopt and to regulate, and that would be to prohibit the new drive-through facilities in the mixed-use commercial zone. Under the second option, we would allow drive-throughs in the mixed-use commercial zone with the new standards and restrictions required by the state mandate. Largely, that would include revising our code to allow for a walk-up service area window. Option 3 would be to consider new drive-throughs and the gas station allowance in the MUC zone under a conditional use permit. That would allow the city to consider the unique characteristics of the proposed drive-through use and apply standards and conditions that protect the welfare of adjacent properties and the community as a whole. And then option 4 is kind of a combination of any of the three options based off of council's preferences. So an example could be that we would include some drive-through facilities, such as bank teller uses with new standards and restrictions as a permitted use, while considering other drive-through uses like restaurant drive-throughs and the gas stations under a conditional use permit. So with that, I'll open it up to questions of staff or any discussion that you might want to entertain.
All right. Questions for Aaron and/or Aquila? Councilperson Pratt. Okay, Councilor Gonzalez.
Thank you very much for this information. I do have some questions for you for the MUC. I know this was a general presentation, but I'm sure there's been some consideration. So if we do not, maybe it's just a statement, if we do not allow drive-throughs in these areas, has there been consideration for seniors and of course parents, young families where their kids are still in their car and they can't get out to get things? So what kind of considerations have we been thinking through before we make a decision around this MUC area?
It's a good question. I don't know if the state considered those questions when they were working on this rulemaking. I know that they did a large public engagement process as part of this CFAC program. I don't know the specifics of it, and I can look into that. But as far as the city, I don't know if those questions came up when we worked with our particular stakeholders.
So they're not requiring us, they're just requiring us to adopt something, correct? So we don't have to say no, ban it completely. We just have to give directions.
Right, we just have to adopt standards that make drive-throughs compatible with walking. And so that people that are arriving on foot get the same or better service as people arriving in cars.
And I'm sure they've done some case studies around other cities that have done this, and maybe some cities that have undone it. Is there information around that as well?
I'm not aware of if that work was done. I didn't see that in the guidance language. It kind of talks about some of the whys, and a lot of it was just to encourage more pedestrian-oriented uses and compact development. So I think largely they kind of looked away from the gaze of a vehicle and that, I guess, accessibility and ease that comes with maybe having small children or being a senior citizen and getting around.
Yes, and I'll close with this. When I was looking into this and looking at the population impacts as we're heading in the next 30 years, Washington County alone is looking at quite significantly the population of the aging population where they don't want to get out of the car. They need to be able to drive up because they can. So walkability, which is, and then also we also have flourishing young families as well. This is a big number. I know that we're planning and everything we're making now is for the future. So my hope is, I guess I'm asking these questions more so to kind of help guide my decision here and look into the future. So thank you.
Just to chime in on the case study, I think we might end up being the case study. We're probably one of the first cities to adopt under these regulations, since we were one of the first cities to adopt the TSP under the new climate-friendly, equitable communities. So you may be setting a standard.
Well, I wanted to thank you for the the two maps in particular that showed the actual, what's in that, you know, we get a big pink blob in it, so then you're just trying to guess about where it's at, so this was really helpful. And then showing the two pieces of property that are kind of left blank there, and it's really changed my mind, because in that area, I don't see where, I think it would make a mess in that area to use those two properties that way. And we already have like a Bridgeport, where if it's got the nice sidewalks and everything, where we have like Shake Shack that people can access. And the whole point of the MUC is to make it a more walker-friendly area. We have, the bus service we do have is located right there, so there are ways to get there. But thank you for these maps.
You're welcome.
Councilor Brooks.
I really appreciate the presentation too. It's really clear and helps me understand things very well. My one question I had was, how many drive-up, drive-through things do we have here in the city of Tualatin as it stands? Just in general, how many bank teller, drive-throughs, car washes, oil change places?
It's a
I know we
good
don't
question.
have a theater.
I didn't do an inventory per se, but when I kind of poked around just to see where they might be located or how big the sites might be, I was surprised to see that there was more than I originally thought.
So one of the things when I think about, and even when we're talking about the downtown redevelopment and what we're doing, is that people sometimes refer to our city, they get through it, and there's these main, you know, old-fashioned ways that things were built with strip malls, and then people go in and they go out and they try to get out of the traffic jam. And so for me, some of the work that we're doing with the MUC and with the other zone is to make that not that, make it a place for people to come and stay and visit and to live and walk and play. And if they don't have high visibility, to not be worried about their kids getting hit by a car and somebody getting hit on a bike or whatever. So in my mind, I like the idea of option one. I imagine that we have enough drive-throughs as it stands, and I think it will just keep it really simple for making land use decisions uncomplicated, which they're already complicated, and then really reduces the carbon, and it's for a small area, but it's for a concentrated area for specific uses. So I don't see where it conflicts with, like, I just don't see a drive-through right next to Bridgeport with all the restaurants that are at Bridgeport. I don't think they'd even appreciate that much. Anyway, thank you.
Other comments or questions? All right, so I'll throw my opinion in here, then we have to give guidance on which of the four directions we want staff to go in. I'm in agreement with Councilor Brooks. The only two options I'd be open to is either number one or number two, where they'd be severely restricted. But looking in that area, the whole idea of that area, I know looking forward and councils before us, was to have this as a mixed-use area, you know, a transit-oriented development, if you will. Back in the day when we were looking at the Southwest Quarter landing down near Bridgeport Village, that we would have folks living there in addition to shopping and doing all that stuff, that they could walk this whole area and not have to worry about, you know, getting run over by a car. It is a challenge to get over to Bridgeport Village from where the old Village Inn is, but that could be addressed. But, you know, envisioning with the governor's goal of we need more housing throughout the state. So here's some prime pieces of land that could be developed in a mixed-use format, that those folks who are living there wouldn't really need a car because buses are there, restaurants are there, food service is there. All the things they need, they really don't need to have a car to go to. So in my mind, the 3 and 4 are out. I'm majority on number one with a little flexibility on number two, because one of the things I looked at was the state's guidance and model code on what you could do and what you could limit in terms of if you do have a drive-through and they just take up too much land. As Aaron was mentioning, they're taking up an acre of land that could be developed into housing when we need it so much, and maybe housing that truly is, middle class workforce housing in that area because it's right on transit routes. So to have an acre of land or multiple acres of land taken up for a drive-through is a waste of space in my mind in a very compact zone. So that's my opinion. So let's go ahead, Councilor Reyes.
So when we write this code, it has to be for all the 4 or 5 areas that we saw?
There's only one area.
No,
That area.
I'm talking about, she showed on Grand's,
Mm-hmm.
the Grand
area.
Hotel, yeah, so
you
we
bring
can
up-
can you bring up the map that
Yep.
had point,
The 2 open properties.
that one, right there. So if we decide, or we give you direction, it will have to be all those areas right there. It can be like, oh, just want this, like the point will have a restricted, like option 1 code, or the REI, or any of that will have a different code. Do we have to like choose one, or can we like spread around like the codes, or,
It would be for the entire zone.
The entire zone.
Yeah.
because that changes everything. When you say in and out property, that is already owned by them?
They're showing up on the tax assessment roll, so I believe so,
So they bought the property that is their own property?
to my knowledge.
Yeah, well, I have a mixed feeling about just restricting it all to like option 1. I feel like I don't want to support that, because I feel like you restrict a lot of other things too, and I want to be open to other things, such as what Councilor Gonzalez said about senior or families that can't get out, and will require actually some access through their vehicle. I want to be conscious of that as well. And one of the things that we saw through the pandemic, where I work, is that a lot of seniors were really happy that we had a drive-through experience, because otherwise there was nothing that they could have done. They couldn't go, and it's very hilly where I work, so that was one of the features that they really liked, that they were able to socialize that way to come out. So I'm thinking of like, if we restrict it to just nothing, then people will have to pay, like people that are homebound will have to pay to have somebody buy their food, bring it back to them. Anyway, so that still doesn't sound to me that we're friendly to our residents, even if they have a home 2 blocks from it. So that's just my thought process.
Sure, yeah, of course.
Thank you for the additional information that you brought forward today. My opinion hasn't really changed since the last time we discussed this. I lean toward option 2 for all the reasons that Councilor Reyes just mentioned, and also Councilor Gonzalez. I love the idea of a walkable city, all for a walkable city. But I just think that there's some areas in this particular zone that we could possibly see a drive-through in. And as I said last time, we don't know what innovations are out there. I'm concerned about, what's coming in the future, possibly. We don't know. And I look at the restrictions that we made for food carts, for example. And now we live in a world which I know is not apples to apples, but now we live in a world where food carts are everywhere. And we've sort of closed the door on that for a period of time, which I know we're working on. And so, and also, yes, it doesn't seem very inclusive or equitable for those folks, senior folks that have mobility issues. Again, all the things that were previously mentioned. So for that, I lean toward option 2.
Others? Councilor Gonzalez.
So I want to add that I'm leaning to option 4 or 3. I just don't want to hamstring the future council people. I like to have options. I mean, it still does give us opportunity to say, no, we don't want something, or yes, we do want something. But it would be the behest of the council now or the future. So I'd rather just not let regulation creep. It's just a matter of time. In 20 years from now, we're going to wonder how we got here. We're going to be unpacking all this stuff. So I'd rather just keep it open for all of us and have that choice for the council.
Councilor Pratt.
I'm kind of on option 1, so.
Councilor Brooks.
I'm just going to reiterate around option 1. I do think that we have a lot of things available for drive-ups in a lot of areas in our community, so I don't think that anyone's really being shut out of anything. I also, except for the people that don't want to be around cars all the time, and there are those people. The other thing is, and the younger people too, the other thing is when we don't have something super clear, it gets complicated, and then we have all these extra things. And to me, sometimes it's the opposite of having choices, because somebody will click all the boxes, and then we won't have a choice. We'll never even see it. It'll be a land use decision, it'll be an architectural review, and there's nothing that the council really has in weighing in on that. So I don't see it giving us more choices. I think if we really want to be a clean city, and we really want to have part of our city walkable, and we want to have middle income and concentrated builds and more businesses, and incentivize those things, we have to have a plan that people actually want. And I think that we see it in other areas. This isn't a new design, even though it might be new to the suburbs. Anyway, that's my 2 cents, but I don't think we would have more choices.
What the mayor said about this land being available for housing makes so much sense to me, because it's right there where we have our best transit location and all kinds of walkable. It's already, there's Bridgeport and a lot of things there already. I'm a little, I'm just not even gonna go to the senior thing, but I'm worried that people that are that unable to do anything else are not gonna be able to drive either, so.
Question. Is that area also where we have agreed to have 7 stories, not 7 stories, but 70, we agreed on that?
Yep.
Okay. Just thought I want to be reminded on that.
So staff, I don't want to kick the can down the road again on this, but as I said, I could live with number 2, knowing that if you read what's in CFIX guidelines, number 2, it is restrictive on what you can do in a drive-through. So I can live with 2. This way, we can move on, or if folks aren't willing to get a majority to number 2, I guess we're going to bring this back again, which I prefer not to. Council President Pratt.
On number 2, though, aren't you using the same amount of land, which was one of the big issues?
You'd be using up a lot of land, but you have to follow the CFAC guidelines on,
To make it walk up?
to make it, basically like you see like that futuristic Taco Bell. That it's got to meet a whole bunch of setback requirements, there's queuing requirements, there's a whole bunch of stuff in the CFAC code about, you don't want to, there's prohibitions against big parking lots. There's also a prohibition that the cars can't flow through and block parking stalls, all the things you're worried about in a restaurant that has a huge presence.
And a 2-mile line.
And a 2-mile line, all the stuff you were worried about. We give the option that you could have a drive-through somewhere in the zone, but, with my hope ideally that wouldn't occur, that we'd have residential. Councilor Reyes.
But it doesn't have to be a restaurant, it could be a bank, right? So if someone buys, we're thinking restaurants in our heads, but it could be also a bank that can have the Wells Fargo and Martinez, we just, have that drive-through, or even the one by Rivermark or Riverview, the one that's by bricks. I mean, so it's not necessarily,
No, it's not
I guess, yeah, I think we see a Taco Bell, so in our minds, that's the image, but it doesn't necessarily have to be. So whoever buys that property or wants to redesign can have something that is number two, basically.
I just, not to go argumentative, but if you look at banks are shutting down drive-throughs.
Yeah, you're not gonna have a
The
bank.
drive-throughs are gone. They're still there, but they're not utilizing them.
Future in 10 years, 15 years, we don't know what the world's gonna look like. That's what I'm thinking. I mean, it's been, believe it or not, 10 years since we said no to the food carts. 10 years. So a lot of, I mean, I'm just thinking in 10 years and 15 years what things are gonna look like.
So I'm open to two. Councilor Brooks?
I think that, one thing is I think that it's split enough that I wouldn't mind having a full council to make the decision. And in 10 years, it also might look like a terrible situation because of the climate situation. There's already the first time that the cooling from the ocean has failed is this year, this week. People probably don't know it because people don't read about it. So we could have a situation where the Gulf Stream does finally fail and that we've just slow moved on all this stuff. We're also getting a climate action person on board, and we might have more information to make a better informed decision. But for me, if we have the opportunity to pass option one with a full council, I would be up for that. Yeah.
I don't know if you're gonna, hearing Counselor to my right, I don't think you're gonna get the whole council for option number one, so
No,
what?
no, I mean the whole council in attendance.
Yeah, but I'm saying, okay,
You're not gonna get the whole council.
you're not gonna get the whole council
On any of
already,
them.
so
Yeah.
when do you need this by? And, because that's one of my concerns, and like we said, I don't know how many councils back, you know, what tonight, what's gonna affect your decision in the future that you don't have tonight?
So,
Wasn't that the gist of, back in the old days when the council used to
Yeah.
pump this for months and months and months and drove me crazy as a counselor? What's gonna be different a month from now that Erin or Aquila could say that they're not saying tonight? So,
well, thank you for that. So I brought up this next slide, which kind of shows what I was thinking. So we have our extension until December 2025 to get this adopted and accomplished. But given that that's around the holiday season, I was hoping that we could have a planning commission recommendation in October. There could be some wiggle room with that, but I like to play it a bit more conservatively and kind of stick to a schedule that I guess doesn't leave us open to any DLCD reprimand.
right.
But largely, our draft code and our findings and analysis have been completed. We just need to finalize this mixed-use component so I can plug that in. Given that, do you have any?
What, did I see other questions or?
You had your,
Do you see any
Well, my
wiggle
question is
room?
more
or-
to you, I guess, is, we're really split here, so I like the idea of letting Counselor Hillier weigh in, because she didn't really choose to not be here tonight.
Right.
But then we're still gonna be split, so do we just go with majority?
it's gonna have to be majority, yeah,
Okay,
and make sure
well-
people are gonna be able to live with that. Because it's not gonna be unanimous, I can already see that.
No.
Yeah.
I mean, we're really split here, so I would be fine with the majority with the full council.
You're not going to have a full council until the first meeting in November?
Oh, my goodness. So then we're stuck here.
Can I ask a question?
Sure, go ahead.
I just want to clarify, I'm having a hard time, following the environmental impact, because to me, if someone wants a drive-through, they're gonna go through a drive-through. So if it's not convenient, they're gonna drive farther. We're gonna have fewer drive-throughs with more people sitting in line at those drive-throughs. So to me, that seems like more admissions versus it being convenient for those folks. In addition to the rules that were laid out, it seems like these specific drive-throughs would be versus the ones that are currently in place, which actually it would apply to all of them, I guess, but that there's certain things that are being put in place to eliminate sort of the congestion argument. So I'm just trying to follow, yeah.
I'd love to respond. I feel like there's no drive-throughs operating in this area to start with, so I don't think there's a big desire for drive-throughs, to be honest. And then the ones that we do have, we have a lot of them, and they're located in all the sort of main area of our city. So as we redevelop here, we could put more concentrated builds, and it could be cleaner air for the people that want to live in a more walkable community, which a lot of young people really want. They don't want to have a car. They don't want to have all that kind of stuff. And you have jobs right there. You'd have you have your grocery store, your jobs, everything right there. So you don't have to get in a car for any reason.
But what about older people? I mean, that's young people.
Well, and depending on their living situation, but we have a lot of older people and a lot of drive-throughs as it is everywhere. There's just this area. If there was a big, huge clamoring for drive-throughs, there's only 3 vacant properties. So do we want to waste potential housing, or do we want to actually put our money where our mouth is for going for climate action and what we're saying and be an example of what that looks like?
I thought this was a mixed use, which means that people can still live on those, like have.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you still have business and you'll still have.
Right, but if you have a
still have
drive-through, it
residential.
takes up the space where you could have apartment buildings or businesses and the restaurant or the bank or whatever. So that's the whole idea, that you have more units to be able to open up to seniors that might need a house. Anyway, it's just a housing question, or maybe somebody's going to want to drive through one day.
I got the word simplifying.
Yeah, I see it more as like how we envision this small area and with very limited land. And if we put housing in, I'm thinking like similar to Orenco Station, there's a lot of seniors that live there and they walk even slowly, but they can, or when they're cars, but they can get to things much more safely that are very close by. So it would be, in a lot of ways, an ideal senior location, but I see it more as not what we're not allowing, but what we vision this little area to be.
And if it's helpful to provide more context, one of the components of this CFAC rulemaking does include rules for how we would approve building development in commercial and mixed-use zones. And what I mean by that is that these rules would now require that the building have frontage along the public right-of-way. So the building would be located up to the street, and we would require a main entrance that faces the street. So when you think about how these standards might encourage more of an urban design context as opposed to a suburban design context, it could be more challenging to fit a drive-through into that urban mold. So maybe a different layer of consideration.
All right, so what's the desire? Do you want to, so if we push this to November, how does that mess up your schedule? Obviously it does. Will we meet the DLCD? I don't want to get in trouble with DLCD, but if they're saying, if we're saying we're working on it,
Yeah,
give us
we'll have to request another extension, really. I would imagine they would grant it, but yeah, we need to request another extension and then continue the discussion in November.
Okay.
Is it helpful if I go through some of the restrictions? Because they basically are, I guess I would kind of be echoing what Aaron just said, but so if there are drive-throughs, so let's say that we go with option 2. The drive-through lane can't be between the building and the street, so that kind of creates a design where, like Aaron was saying, the building's up to the sidewalk, public right-of-way, and then you have to have a pedestrian access from there to the building. There's some queuing standards and how far away the driveway can be from the intersection, which I think is 50 feet. There's different stacking length for whether it's a gas station or other types of, when it's in other types of drive-throughs, you need like 150 to 160 feet, or if for a single lane, or 75 to 80 if you're gonna do more than one stacking lane.
Yep.
And then there's quite a few design regulations about the walk-up service and what that pedestrian service looks like. And the vehicles, the pedestrian and the walk-up can't be used by vehicles. I'm not sure if they can cross the pedestrian area or not. It has to be connected to the street by a walkway or pedestrian amenity space. There might be some other requirements in there, but so, and they will have to provide a walk-up. So if there is a drive-through, they have to provide a walk-up. The one example I can think of that might fit the way that's designed is the Wells Fargo on Martinazzi, where you have like the main entrance on Martinazzi and the teller, the drive-through on the back, if that makes sense. That's the one that I can really think of that's designed like that. I don't know if it meets all the spacing standards, but, so those would be the restrictions that we would put in place. And then the difference between option 2 and 3 is that with 3, they would have to go through a conditional use permit to make sure that they're meeting all those standards. We'd basically be looking to see, are you meeting all of the standards that are listed out? And then whatever impacts they have from their traffic studies, they'd have to figure out how to mitigate those traffic impacts. So the conditional use permit kind of puts an extra level of discretion over it versus just meet these standards or don't. If it's just going with option 2, we're basically telling the future developer, like, you have to meet these standards, or I suppose they could apply for a variance, but it's either, it becomes a lot less discretion. So I don't know if that helps your discussion at all.
That's good. Go ahead.
I just think this could be like a really neat way to see some great innovation in what people come up with. I'll just say that, given the input from the other counselors, this is not, I would support option 1 from the lens that this could provide some additional housing, and it's not something that I think will cause any harm to any residents either way. And so because of that, and if it helps move this process along, I will support option 1 if we can get a majority.
I'm with 1.
Do we have to make a motion, or do we
No,
just
we
do a
just
thumbs
give
up?
guidance. Right?
All right, okay, so I'm gonna repeat that to make sure I understand. We're gonna go forward with option 1. So when the ordinance comes back for all of the CFAC walkable design standards, that's what you will see. Okay, all right, thank you.
Thank you.
All right. All right, so that brings us to, I think, council roundtable, all that good stuff. So I have Council President Pratt is up for the pledge tonight. I have one proclamation, and it's for domestic violence. Anyone like to do this one? Okay, Councilor Sacco. All right. And then looking at the consent agenda, any issues with the consent agenda? Anybody want something pulled from consent? All right. All right, and then with that, we'll go ahead and start the round table. I'll go ahead and start with Councilor Gonzalez.
The mayor and I attended the farmer's market on last Sunday. Though it wasn't a huge attendance, we're hoping to spur some more activity, but this is the beginnings, and it was like a lot of fun hanging out with the mayor.
Getting poured on.
Being poured on, yes. But that's all I got to report for right now.
All right. Counselor Brooks. All right. Counselor Sacco.
Thank you. On September 15th, we had the IDEA Committee. Dustin, the Director of Parks, attended to talk to the committee about gathering places, which is a great, robust conversation. I appreciate your attendance, Dustin. We also talked about the collaboration collaboration opportunities between Arts and Parks Committee, especially as we look at how Arts, Parks, and IDEA shape Cora, which could be interesting to get all those thought leaders together. We also continued our conversation around land acknowledgement, and I just wanted to express the robust conversation and thoughtfulness that this group is going through when considering this. It's not something that they're taking lightly at all, as they shouldn't. And so I don't know that we will see anything soon. I know this is something that we tasked them with, but they are being very careful in the way that they think about what they want to put forward. So just wanted to share that. And that's it.
Counselor Reyes.
No, I actually want to apologize that I missed the meeting last Tuesday. For some reason, I didn't pop up in my calendar, and so I will look back on what were the minutes from that meeting. So it was at the downtown parking area meeting. So I apologize for that.
Counselor Brooks.
Okay, on the 11th, I attended the PAB meeting, and we discussed some changes to approving some changes to the language to the Cora. Does that make sense? Yeah. And then I also did the mayor's call on the 15th. The Arts Committee, we met. We didn't have a quorum, so we couldn't make all the decisions that we would have liked to, but we did discuss what our priorities, what their priorities are going to be, and what projects they anticipate moving forward. And they're also updating they do a community investment grant like we do, and so they will be on the same timeline as the council in the future, and they're working towards that. And they've done such great work on it. And then I did the Water Consortium, and there will be an in-person meeting, and part of it will be saying goodbye to Rebecca Gleason, who's been in charge of the consortium for 20 or 30 years. I can't remember which one, but a long time. So we're going to miss her, and she's been a great partner to us, and the consortium really helped build relationships to make our contracting go much better this last time, so that we have a great 30-year contract. And so it's going to be a loss, because I enjoyed working with her. Anyway, thanks.
Councilor President Pratt.
Well, I stopped by the Grange Market after it stopped raining. And the one good thing I found out is that the Grange plans to continue the market next year. So that was great news. We went to the C4 Metro Subcommittee meeting where we got a presentation from TriMet about how they don't have enough money and they're going to have to cut programs. And I was happy that Mayor Buck from Lake Oswego reminded TriMet that the STIF funds are meant for increased services, not to fill their issues. So I was really glad that got said out loud. On the 18th, I went with the mayor to the AARP Conference on Aging. It was really great. My favorite session was where they talked a lot about just making houses, when they're built, ready for seniors, like just things like the entryway, you know, there's no reason for those steps up a lot of times, putting backer boards in the bathrooms and putting cabinets in the kitchens so they could be removed for wheelchairs. And they said it's really pretty cost effective for builders to do this, so I thought that was really great, that there's a lot of advocacy for that. Oh, and I have to call the mayor out because he did not participate in the sing-along, but that's okay. That evening I went to, it was really fascinating. I know Councilor Brooks has done this, but I went in Hillsborough to the Clean Water Services Essentials Training to learn about our sewer and stormwater runoff systems, but it was just fascinating. We got to go through the labs and see all the great work they do and how, you know, they're ready testing for PFAS and everything else. And we actually got to see little trays of poop that they test, which is kind of funny, but it was super fascinating. And the one thing I learned that I did not know, that in the summer, like the Tualatin River, 70% of that water is coming from Clean Water Services or storm runoff. So, and they assured me it is safe to swim in that water. That's it.
All right. Quickly, because I want to give the city manager time for all her wonderful news. On 9/11, the Washington County Mayor's informal Zoom meeting resumed after several months. We had really good discussions about things going on in the county. You can imagine with 2 levies we talked about a lot. On the 13th, went to CERT's Emergency Preparedness Fair. Fantastic showing of folks there, a lot cooler than it was last year. So good stuff given out. I got my preparedness box for my car. It's one thing I never thought about, is having food, water, batteries, devices already pre-packed in a box that they were giving away. So it was fantastic. The Grange, yeah, I was there with Councilor Gonzalez. One thing I'd want to encourage people, one, to attend, and two, the variety of vendors that are there, they're doing pretty decent. I actually should say well. At least 4 of the vendors I know had sold out that day. So I encourage, one, vendors to come and, you know, promote their products, and 2, for the community to show up. Yeah, it was pouring rain, but I'm going to be a little pain in the butt here. We're always being told that we need a farmer's market. We've got one. People aren't showing up. So if you want a farmer's market, show up. It's the 2nd and 4th Sundays of the month. I'll end here in mid-October, but when it comes back, please attend. The Zero Touch ribbon cutting was fantastic, seeing a new high-tech firm here in the city, located, 30 employees, doing some really cool technology on testing of parts without having to actually touch the part, all done by cameras and lasers. As Council President Pratt mentioned, the Age-Friendly Summit AARP, I've got some notes I'm going to type up and send out to the council plus the Aging Task Force. They're very eager to hear about that. That evening, spent some time at the Metro Mixer. Councilor Rosenthal gave an update on what's going on in our area and as well as other areas in Metro. And got to chat with folks throughout the whole Metro system, not just from Councilor Rosenthal's district. Last Friday, the Southeast Washington County Mayor Lunch was held. Again, another informal networking event for us to let our hair down and discuss things frankly. And then finally today, I met with our school superintendent, Dr. Udo Sanada, for about an hour. I had a great conversation on things going on in the school district and let him know what's going on here in the city. So with that, I'll turn it over to City Manager Lambos.
Thank you, Mayor. One of the things on my list was the Grange Market. So this encouraging support as it came up in the downtown revitalization farmers market over and over and over. So, but also that lots of folks, most of those folks don't know anything about the Grange Market. So there's lots of work left to do. The next one is the 28th, so this coming Sunday, and I believe Council President Pratt and Councilor Hillier, if she's up to it, will be working the city booths or the chat with your councilor booth. Last Saturday, the 20th, we did a cleanup, Las Casitas neighborhood cleanup, and 2 dumpsters of trash were filled, 2 big dumpsters. Neighbors helped load trucks to haul items for residents who couldn't bring them to the dumpsters. The community expressed great appreciation for the efforts that have been taking place in this neighborhood cleanup day. Several neighbors noted that because we come out more consistently in recent years, the neighborhood has managed to stay cleaner overall. And residents shared that through these efforts, they now have a better relationship with Republic Services and know who to call or what items can go in their recycling bins. So that's good news. The seismic valves that are going on the water, our water tanks, that we got funding for through the state. Our Public Works Department is in the process of getting those procured, and we have a limited time frame for when we can spend the money, so we're on that right now. Just a reminder that the Neighborhood Transportation Safety Program, the call for projects is still open. I mean, it'll be open all year, but the specific this season, it closes on the 30th. I'm happy to announce that we are the recipients of a $100,000 grant through the Oregon State Parks that was facilitated in the local government grant program. We were one of 13 agencies selected in the small grant award category and the only one selected in that category in the Portland Metro. So that was thanks to Dustin and his team. The grant will help us bring an amazing universal design playground to the community park in a project that will pair with Parks Utility Funds. So that will be happening in the spring of '26. Grand opening at Zero Touch, that was great. It's always wonderful to see high tech manufacturing jobs come to Tualatin. We have an all-employee meeting this coming Wednesday at Community Park where we will get some updates and do some service anniversaries, celebrations, and some other things. The League of Oregon Cities Conference is next week. Next week, I believe, right?
Yep.
Yeah. It's here in Portland, well, not here in Tualatin, but it is in Portland, in the Portland region, and that will be a great conference. And then the CCIO, the Commercial Community Involvement Organization, their annual meeting is this Thursday at 3:30. Mayor and Council President Pratt, along with Sid Sin, our Economic Development Manager, will be speaking. And finally, leading up to the Pumpkin Regatta, which is in October, of course, the library hosts a Shrunken Regatta. And that goes October 7 through 28. You can drop by the library, get your pack of supplies. They're small miniature pumpkins, and this year's theme is Spooky Squash. So it's always a really fun time, so participate in that. That's all I've got.
All right. So with that, I'll go ahead and close the work session for this evening. It looks like we've got about a minute or so before we kick off the council meeting.